My husband confessed during a family dinner that he regrets having children with me, so I locked myself in the guest room, but a week later, he whispered, "I made a mistake, please come back." My name is Corinne, 39 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon. I've been married to Elias for 15 years. We have 2 kids, Matilda, who's 11 and loves fantasy books and climbing trees, and Jonah, who's 8 and thinks he's part velociraptor. I work part-time as an art teacher at a local community center, and the rest of my time is spent parenting, cooking, cleaning, keeping a home running. The usual chaos. Elias is a senior software engineer. He's smart, maybe too smart. He talks in metaphors and code and has this way of looking at problems like puzzles, like they can always be solved. Except, as I learned, people aren't problems, and some things can't be debugged. The truth is, I started noticing the distance months before that dinner. Not dramatic changes. Just small shifts. Fewer shared laughs. Less eye contact. More late nights working, more time on his phone. He'd ask about the kids, but not about me. He'd show up for dinner but not for the conversation. He'd say, "I'm just tired," with a shrug that shut down any attempt to go deeper. I didn't push. I should have. The dinner in question was for Elias's dad's birthday. A milestone year, 70. We invited his parents over for a full meal. I cooked for hours, lamb with garlic and rosemary, potatoes, glazed carrots, a chocolate cake Matilda helped decorate. It felt good to do something as a family, something that resembled how we used to be. Everyone sat around the dining table, the kids laughing, Elias's dad cracking the same corny jokes, his mom commenting on how the kids had grown. It was warm. Familiar. Safe. And then, without warning, Elias said it. We were mid-meal. His mom had just finished talking about their upcoming cruise when she turned to Elias and said, "You seem quiet tonight, everything all right?" And he said, calmly, almost robotically, like he'd rehearsed it in his head 100 times, I think I made a mistake having kids. Or maybe, having kids with you." Silence. Matilda looked up from her plate. Jonah froze mid-bite. His mother's jaw dropped. His dad muttered, "Jesus, Elias." And me? I didn't say a word. I stood up from the table, walked down the hall, went into the guest room, and locked the door behind me. I didn't come out. Not that night. Not the next day. Not for an entire week. Elias knocked twice the first day. Asked to talk. I didn't respond. I heard the kids outside the door at one point, Matilda whispering, "Is mommy sick?" I texted my mom and asked her to come get them. She arrived that evening without asking questions and drove them back to Ashland with her. She knew something was wrong, she just didn't know what. I turned off my phone for 3 days. I cried. I stared at the ceiling. I laid in bed and wondered if maybe I had imagined everything. If maybe I had failed him in some way. If maybe I was too wrapped up in the kids and the routines and the endless cycle of doing everything right that I forgot about the man sitting across the table from me every night. But no. No one deserves to be humiliated like that. Especially not in front of their children. By the 5th day, I started remembering moments. Little memories that used to bring me joy but now felt like cruel echoes. The way Elias used to wait in the car with the heater running when I came out of late art classes in the rain. The note he once left in my lunchbox when I went back to work after Jonah was born, "You're strong. You're brilliant. You're not alone." And the moment he looked at our daughter the day she was born and said, "She's perfect. She looks like you." What happened to that man? On the 6th night, I heard the softest knock. I ignored it. Then I heard his voice. Tired, low, raw. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "Please come back." He didn't wait for a reply. Just stood there for a while, then walked away. And I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling again, thinking, what kind of mistake? Having kids? Or saying it out loud? Or maybe the mistake was thinking I'd ever fully known him at all. I didn't unlock the door that night. I just laid there, listening to the house breathe. Every sound was magnified: the creak of the hallway floorboards, the soft hum of the refrigerator down the hall, a car driving by. Normal sounds in an otherwise shattered space. I didn't cry. I think I had cried myself dry by then. It was this numbness that had settled into me, this thick, dull ache that didn't know where to go. My body still felt like it was bracing for impact, like something worse was still coming. The next morning, I got up, showered, and brushed my hair for the first time in days. I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. My eyes looked hollow. My skin was blotchy. But I forced myself to look. Not because I felt better, but because I needed to feel something. When I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, the house was eerily still. I walked through the rooms. The kitchen was clean, too clean. The kids' backpacks were hanging by the door, untouched. Their cereal bowls were stacked neatly in the drying rack. Everything was in its place, except the people. Elias wasn't home. His car was gone. There was a note on the kitchen table in his handwriting: "Took a walk. If you want to talk, I'm around. If not, I get it." I read it 3 times, then folded it and slid it into my sweater pocket without really knowing why. I didn't text him. Instead, I called my mom. I asked how the kids were. She said they were okay. Confused, but okay. She didn't press me, didn't ask what happened, just said, "Take the time you need." Then, gently, "They're asking about you." I promised I'd see them soon. My voice cracked. I think that's when she knew this wasn't just a bad argument or a rough patch. This was something else. That day, I sat in the backyard for hours. Just me and Moose, our dog, curled up at my feet. I thought about everything: who we used to be, who we'd become, and that moment at the table that split our lives into before and after. I kept replaying his words in my head, over and over again: "I think I made a mistake having kids. Or maybe with you." It wasn't just the words. It was the cold, emotionless way he said them. Like he had already made peace with them. Like he had been carrying that thought for so long that saying it out loud didn't even scare him anymore. That was the part that hurt the most. I wasn't angry he was struggling. I could have handled that. We all struggle. But the fact that he let that rot sit inside him for years without telling me, and then chose a dinner table with our children and his parents as the setting to finally unload it? That's what I couldn't forgive. Not yet. When Elias came home that evening, he didn't look surprised to see me out of the guest room. He just looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind of tired that runs bone deep. He paused in the doorway, then walked into the living room and sat down in the armchair across from me. Not next to me. Not too close. We sat in silence for what felt like an hour. It was probably 10 minutes. He finally said, "I don't even know why I said it. I mean, I do. But I don't. Not like that. Not there." I didn't speak. I just looked at him. He kept going. Slowly. Carefully. Like walking barefoot over broken glass. I'd been feeling like I'm drowning. Not because of the kids. I love them. I swear, Corinne. But I haven't felt like myself in years. I don't feel like a person. I feel like a machine. A paycheck. A fixer. A to-do list. His voice cracked a little then. He looked down at his hands. "And instead of talking to you, like a normal adult, I let it fester. I let it twist into something ugly. And then I dropped it on you like a explosive." Still, I didn't say anything. I wasn't ready to forgive. I wasn't even sure I was ready to engage. But I was listening. That was something. The next day, I packed a small bag. I booked an Airbnb about an hour outside the city, near a hiking trail we used to visit before we had kids. It was quiet, surrounded by tall pine trees and thick fog in the mornings. I needed air. I needed time. I needed to not be needed by anyone for a while. I left Elias a note. Not dramatic. Just, I need space. I'm safe. I'll be in touch. No love, Corinne. No closing line. Just honesty. The Airbnb was small, just a single room with a kitchenette and a fireplace. I brought my sketchbook and some paints. I hadn't painted in months. I didn't expect to be able to paint now. But something inside me said, bring them anyway. The first 2 days, I didn't touch the supplies. I walked. I cooked simple meals. I sat on the little porch and listened to the wind move through the trees. I watched a deer cross the path one morning and thought about how far away my life felt from this. On the third day, I opened my sketchbook. My hand shook a little, but I kept going. The first thing I drew was a crooked version of Matilda's treehouse. Then a cartoonish version of Jonah pretending to be a dinosaur. And finally, without meaning to, I started sketching Elias. The way he looked when we were younger. Before the lines around his eyes. Before the weight of life changed the way he carried himself. It made me cry. But it also made me feel something I hadn't in a while, clarity. I stayed at the cabin for a little over 2 weeks. During that time, Elias texted twice. Both times were short. Just wanted you to know the kids are okay. They miss you. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready. There was no pressure. No begging. Just space. And strangely, that's what made me willing to think about coming back. He wasn't chasing me anymore. He was waiting. That mattered. On day 17, I drove back into Portland. I didn't tell Elias I was coming. I didn't even fully decide until I saw the skyline. I just started driving. I passed through Troutdale, merged back onto I-84, and watched the trees give way to houses, shops, and then familiar streets. I had Moose in the passenger seat. He'd stayed with me the whole time, his head resting on my thigh on every drive, a warm reminder that I wasn't completely alone. The house looked the same. Our blue Craftsman, porch lights already on, one of Matilda's boots tossed haphazardly in the front yard. I sat in the car for a minute, gripping the steering wheel, unsure of what I was walking into. I walked up the porch steps slowly, unlocked the door, and stepped into the quiet. The house smelled like Elias's cologne and the faintest trace of laundry detergent. Someone had cleaned. A lot. The entryway was spotless. The kids' shoes were lined up in a row. No toy clutter. No mess. It didn't feel like home. It felt prepared. He must have heard the door. I heard footsteps upstairs, then down the hall. When Elias saw me, he didn't smile. He just nodded once and said, "Hey." That was it. No embrace. No desperate apology. Just 2 people standing in the ruins of something they both once built. I dropped my bag by the stairs. Moose ran into the living room and flopped onto his side with a thud. I took off my coat and hung it up slowly, giving my hands something to do. Then I said, "Where are the kids?" "Still with your mom," he replied. "She's planning to bring them back tomorrow. She wanted to wait until you were ready." I nodded. It was strange how normal everything sounded. Like we weren't walking on emotional rubble. I made myself tea. Sat down at the kitchen island. Elias stood across from me, leaning against the counter. His eyes looked heavy. His face thinner. We sat like that for a long time. No yelling. No flood of emotion. Just quiet. Eventually, I asked, "Have you talked to anyone?" He nodded. "Therapist. Weekly. Started while you were gone. I also joined a group, it's for dads who feel burnt out. Or, detached. I didn't even know those existed. I raised an eyebrow. Do they talk about saying unforgivable things at family dinners? He flinched. Visibly. Then looked down at his hands. Every day since that night, I've thought about how I said it. And every time, I wish I could undo it. His voice was low, careful. I don't want to be excused. I want you to know it wasn't about the kids. It wasn't even about you, not really. It was about how I let my resentment grow without ever saying a word. And then it came out like a weapon. I let the words settle. Then, quietly, I said, you humiliated me. You humiliated yourself. You made our daughter look at me like she was trying to understand if I was the reason her dad was unhappy. Do you know how that feels? He looked like he'd been hit. Yes, he said. I do. Because I've seen that moment play in my mind every night since it happened. There was no victory in watching him unravel. It didn't make me feel better. It didn't take away the pain. But there was something in his honesty that was grounding. The next morning, my mom dropped off the kids. Matilda ran to me and wrapped her arms around my waist without saying anything. Jonah climbed into my lap like he used to when he was younger. He didn't ask where I'd been. He just said, "Moose missed you," and kissed my cheek. Elias kept his distance, letting the kids have me. He was different, more careful around them. He looked them in the eyes when they spoke, listened more. He was trying. And not in the performative, desperate way I'd feared. Just, consistently. Quietly. That week, we told the kids I had gone away for some rest. We didn't lie, but we didn't give them the whole picture either. Matilda is smart though. She knew. She always knows. One night, she said to me, "Did Daddy say something mean to you?" I hesitated. And then I said, "Yes. But he's trying to fix it. And sometimes people need time to figure out how to be better." She thought about it for a second, then asked, "Are you going to leave?" I shook my head. Not right now. But I'm also not going to pretend everything's okay when it's not. She accepted that. In a way that only kids can, openly, without pretense, with this BR and beautiful acceptance of the truth. A few weeks passed. We started therapy together. I wasn't sure I wanted to, but I went. Elias was different there. More open than he had ever been at home. It was like hearing from a version of him I never got access to during our marriage. He admitted he'd been unhappy for a long time but had no language to explain it. That fatherhood overwhelmed him more than he expected. That he felt disconnected from me, not because I changed, but because he had, and he didn't know how to reach back. He even said he sometimes wondered if he was meant to be a father at all. And he hated himself for thinking that. I told him what it felt like to carry the emotional labor for our entire family. To organize, plan, coordinate, remember. To be the default parent, the emotional thermostat, the one who got thanked the least but needed the most. There were tears. There was silence. There were breakthroughs and breakdowns. But it was honest. The walls we'd built started to crumble, not from rage, but from truth. We didn't jump back into bed. We didn't pick up where we left off. We took cautious steps. Parallel lives that slowly started to curve toward each other again. He offered to do more of the pickups and drop-offs. He cooked dinner twice a week. He sat next to me during family movie nights but didn't reach for my hand unless I offered it first. He was learning to show up again. Slowly. Without being asked. I started painting again. For real this time. I opened commissions, set up a little studio in the sunroom, even sold a few pieces online. For the first time in years, I felt like a person again, not just a mother, not just a wife. And Elias noticed. He complimented my work. Asked about it. Wanted to understand it. I didn't let that win me over. Not yet. But it mattered. Because attention, real attention, can feel like love. Even when love itself is still in question. It was about 2 months after I came back that Elias's sister, Carmen, dropped in from San Diego. She was the blunt, no-filter sibling, always flying in with energy like a tornado in heels. I liked her well enough, but she didn't visit often. She was loud, observant, and unafraid to poke at wounds people tried to hide. So, naturally, I was nervous about her arrival. We hadn't told anyone outside of immediate family what happened. His parents knew. My mother knew. But no one else, not friends, not extended family. Carmen didn't know about the dinner, the week I spent locked away, or the cabin in the woods. But the second she walked into our house and took one look at Elias, she narrowed her eyes. "What the hell happened to your face?" she said, laughing but serious. "You look like you've aged 5 years and been through a custody battle." Elias looked at me. I didn't look back. He chuckled, tight and awkward. "Just a rough couple of months." Later, while Elias took Jonah to soccer practice, Carmen and I sat on the back porch with iced tea and a blanket wrapped around our knees. It was late September, and the chill was creeping in early. "You don't have to tell me," she said, "but I know something's off. And I don't want to hear some sanitized version." I stared into my glass, swirling the melting ice. Then, with a deep breath, I told her everything. Not all the ugly therapy details. Just the core of it. The dinner. The words. My silence. My leaving. His so-called epiphany. Carmen went quiet. Then she leaned forward and said, "You've got to be kidding me." "He said that? In front of your kids?" I nodded. "Corinne, you should have thrown the entire damn lamb roast at his face." We both laughed. For the first time in a long while, it was a real laugh. Carmen shook her head. "He's lucky you didn't scorch the earth." Honestly, if I were you, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. That night, as I lay in bed, I kept thinking about what she said. Scorch the earth. No, that wasn't me. But I realized something. I had been doing everything right. Patient. Kind. Mature. And while that was admirable, it was also exhausting. I had never made Elias feel the weight of what he did. Not really. And it was time. So I started with the one thing he never touched, my independence. I sat down at the dining table one morning after the kids left for school and said, "I'm going back to school. I'm applying for the art therapy masters at Pacific University. Classes start in January." Elias blinked. "That's amazing," he said. "I didn't even know you were thinking about that." "I wasn't," I said. "Until I realized I've spent years putting everyone else first. This is for me. I'll need you to take over the afternoons with the kids. Dinner. Homework. School pickups. At least 3 days a week." He hesitated. "That's a lot." I met his gaze. "So was everything I did for 15 years. He didn't argue. Instead, he adjusted. He rearranged his schedule. Started working earlier shifts. He burned a few dinners. Forgot Jonah's cleats once. But he learned. And I didn't lift a finger to save him. I let him flounder, lovingly, but deliberately. Then I did the next thing. I told him I wanted to refinance the house. He looked confused. "Why?" "So my name's on it." Elias looked stunned. "You mean, your name isn't?" "Nope," I said. "We bought it when you were making tech money, and I had just left teaching for maternity leave. It was simpler to put it in your name, remember?" He remembered. He also realized he had nothing to say. So we went to the bank. We started the process. I made sure everything was documented, signed, notarized. Then I got a separate bank account. I didn't ask. I just did it. Elias never protested. He didn't praise me for it either. He just watched as I slowly started to rebuild myself, piece by piece, right in front of him. It was the slowest kind of revenge. Not loud. Not cruel. But powerful. I made him witness my evolution. I made him see the woman he almost lost and realize that he had lost something, maybe not the marriage, yet, but the unquestioned loyalty. The version of me that sacrificed everything and expected nothing in return? She was gone. And then came the final piece. One evening, we were sitting on the couch. The kids were asleep, and we were flipping through shows. I paused the TV. "I'm moving into the guest room for a while," I said. He turned to me, alarmed. "Why?" "Because I need space to finish something," I said. "Something important." The something was a series of art pieces. A collection, really. I'd been working on them for months. Portraits of women in moments of quiet devastation and transformation. I submitted them to a gallery downtown under my maiden name. 3 weeks later, they were accepted. The gallery owner called them hauntingly honest. She wanted to feature them as the headlining show in March. I told Elias the news over dinner. He looked proud. And a little afraid. Then, Matilda spoke. We were eating spaghetti, and she said, "Mom, I like it better now." I looked at her. "Better how, baby?" "When you and Dad are friends. Not trying to pretend everything's okay." I felt the breath catch in my throat. Elias looked like someone had turned the light off behind his eyes. And that's when it hit me, the true revenge wasn't about hurting him. It was about reclaiming myself so completely that he couldn't even recognize the woman sitting across from him. The woman he once told, in front of their children, that he regretted building a life with. And now? She was someone people paid to see. The gallery night came. I wore a deep green dress and heels I hadn't touched in years. Elias stood beside me, supportive, quiet. Friends from the art center came. Even Carmen flew in. She walked up to one of the pieces, a woman sitting in a dark hallway, light pouring in from a door she hadn't yet opened, and turned to me. "This one's about you, isn't it?" I nodded. Carmen smirked. "Damn. You didn't burn his life down. You built something taller next to it and let him live in the shadow of it. Respect." Elias heard her. He didn't argue. He just took a step back and let me stand in the light. So, no, I didn't throw things or slash tires or pack up the kids in the middle of the night. But I made him feel what I felt, powerless, uncertain, and left behind. And while we still live in the same house, sleep in the same space, share the same responsibilities, we're not who we were. And I'm not sure we ever will be. But now? I like it that way. And so does he. Because he knows. This time, I have choices. And if he ever forgets again? He knows exactly what I'm capable of.